for, I'm just going to call that A, we can take out a GCF. And what is the GCF in A? What can I take out of both of those terms? X. So when I take out the X, I would have 9X minus 4. So that's what that one would factor down. But what about B? How would we factor B? What'd you say? Difference of squares. That's that one pattern where you make your two parentheses. Excuse me. So we make our two parentheses for this one. So I would take this first term, and what would I put in the front of both of my parentheses? What multiplies to be 9x squared? 3x, put that in the front. And then, oh, Tanel, what would I put in the back? What multiplies to be 4? 2. And then the last thing is our signs. One would be positive and one would be negative. So C, completely different methods to factor. So it's important that you can determine the difference. All right, so let's go ahead and finish out our notes. We left off yesterday on page 20. So for this first one, what do we know about even functions? Let's underline the word even. What do the arrows do? Do they go same or opposite? Same. So let's write same in that first blank. The ends functions in the same way. And it is possible for even to have no real solution. That is possible. So for this first one, do you think our leading coefficient is positive or negative? Well, you can actually see it though, but how do I know it's positive? Because both arrows are going up, so I'm going to write positive. And this one would be negative. So let's look at an odd degree function. I think odd degrees are a little harder to determine the leading coefficient. So odd degrees in the opposite, so opposite direction. And they have to have at least one real root. So it's impossible for an odd degree to have no real solution. When you're looking at an odd degree, you're going to focus on the right arrow. It's the right arrow. So this arrow is what tells you if it's positive or negative. On that one to the right, notice the arrow is going up, so it would be positive. And on one on the left, the arrow goes down, so that would be negative. Any questions? Okay. So when we look at this function, in factor form, remember, and I'm going to pass back the exit ticket we did a few weeks ago. When it's in factor form, you always flip the sign. That's the main thing to keep in mind. So this one crosses the x-axis 3 times. So we have a intercept here, here, and here. The first time it crosses at -4, but notice that the factor is x plus 4 because we flipped it. The second time it crossed at -2, but the factor would be x plus 2. And the third time it crossed was at x equals +1, so the factor is x minus 1. All right, so let's go ahead and fill in all of our blanks for this graph. So, excuse me, will we say this is odd or even? Even. Is this a positive leading coefficient or a negative leading coefficient? Positive. Now, we only have 2 x-intercepts. Oh, whenever it's an x-intercept, we have to write it as an ordered pair. So the first time is right here, and that's -1, 0. The second time it crosses is right here, and that's +3, 0. When we write our equation, every time it crosses the x-axis, we have to create a parenthesis. So we only have, let me make my f of x equals, or you could say y equals. All right, I have 2 parentheses, put an x in front of both. Now, what's gonna happen with this -1? What am I gonna put here? +1, good. And then what about this +3? What goes here? -3. Now, only when there's a negative leading coefficient, you have to add a number right here. You don't have to do that for this one because it's positive. Any questions? All right, let's go to our next one. Take a minute. Fill in all that you know. Only 2 intercepts, so you should only have 2 factors. Not bad. See, I remembered there was 2 things, 2 little tricks that you have to remember. All right, so Johan, even or odd? Even. Demarion, positive or negative? Negative. So we got even. We have negative. Josepha, where are my intercepts? -6, so we got -6, 0, and we have +2, 0. All right, so now let's write our equation. Y equals, put your 2 parentheses, In my first parentheses, I'm going to put x plus 6 because you have to flip the sign. In the second parentheses, I am going to put x minus 2. Now, here's the trick that you have to remember. Notice how for both of these intercepts, they don't go through. This means they have a multiplicity of 2. Both of these have a multiplicity of 2. So you have to add a 2 to both of those factors because they both bounce. So this is a bounce. So that means it's squared. And this is a bounce. Whenever it bounces, so you understand what I mean when I say bounce. It doesn't go through it. It touches this and makes a U-turn. And then there's one more thing I need to add. What's the last thing this is missing in order to be perfect? A -1. Put a -1 in the front because it has a negative leading coefficient. All right, go ahead and do the next one. I saw most of you all worked ahead, so I'll give you a moment to do that one. All right, so Charles, what would you say, even or odd? Odd. Sabrina, would you say is positive or negative leading coefficient? Negative, good job. This arrow here tells me that it's negative because it's going down on the right, so it's negative. Jordan, where are my x-intercepts? Yep, -2. +3. All right, so we need to make our two factors. So we have y equals, and I have two parentheses. We have to flip the sign. So for this first one, I'm going to put an x plus 2. And the second one, I'm going to put an x minus 3. Now notice that at the -2, do you see how this is a parabola? So it doesn't go through at -2. So the -2, the x plus 2 factor, we have to put a square on that factor. Now the second intercept, the graph crosses. So that can stay a 1. And then the last thing is we have to put a negative in front because the leading coefficient is negative. Give myself a little bit more space. So that would be y equals, and then we're going to put that -1 right there. All right, so we made it to the end. Go ahead and do the last page and see if you can match. So we got 3 graphs. Go ahead and match. So you're only going to use 3 of these equations. So go ahead and put the number next to the graph that you think it could match with. So take a moment and see if you can match it. And then we'll go through it together. So I just want you to look at the graph. Use some clues that you know, like if it's negative, it needs to have a negative in front. So the one that's negative, that should be pretty obvious because only one has a negative. Only one equation is negative. So just write the number of the equation next to the graph. And then we'll go through them. See, we all got some answers. So what did you put for A? What number? 6. You said 6 for A? Who agrees that it's 6? Not 6. Because, remember, we talked about this yesterday. Whenever you have a U-turn that's above the axis, that means that you have an imaginary also. So this here tells me that I also have 2 imaginary. So we need to look for the equation that has 4 factors, including 2 imaginary. So whenever you have a U-turn, it's making a turn. And if it was negative, if it made a turn and did that, this heel counts for something. We can't just ignore that heel, okay? So it wouldn't be 6. So now let's go back. Take a second look. 3. Question 3. You have an intercept at +4. So I have my -4. You have one at +7. So I have my -7. And then I have my 2 imaginaries. And that doesn't have to be x plus I. It could be x plus 2i, x plus 3i. But you have to have an imaginary because of that U-turn that's above the x-axis. Does anyone have questions about that? We have a test on Friday. We only have one more test after this, so these last 2 tests are pretty much it. All right, so I agree that this would be number 3. That was a tricky one, though. All right, so we use number 3. B. There's only one option that B could be. 5, because that's the only one that gave me a negative. And I know it's negative because this side is going down. So I know I need a negative leading coefficient. So that would be number 5. Okay. Last one. I hear 4 and I hear 2. Well, we know for 4, this is a second degree. So equation 4 would be a second degree, which is even, which means arrows would be the same. So it's not 4. So what I'm looking for, because I have one that is a bounce, I need to find an equation that has a squared factor. And the square has to be on x minus 1. So which one do you think it would be? 2. That's really important, this little square, because what's happening in that equation is that this factor here has an invisible 1, and 1 plus 2 is 3. That's a third degree, which is odd. All right, go ahead and take out homework 5. That is due tomorrow. If you weren't here, the homeworks are over there.